Hello, my name is Joshua, and this is Kaleidoscope, an educational podcast hosted by me and my friends Edmund and Cynthia. Our podcast is sort of a one stop shop for all of your career advice questions, answered with the help of industry insiders. We present you with a broad spectrum of professions with as many perspectives through personal testimonies as the colors of a kaleidoscope. And today, our guest is Ms. Ospina, a educator now in Saudi Arabia. And yeah, Mr. Ospina, thank you very much for coming on, and very looking forward to having this conversation with you today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm just really excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Awesome. And maybe you want to just give us a brief introduction, who you are, where you're from, sort of your background, and then we'll get into the 10 questions.
Sure. So my name is Sandra Ospina. Like you said, I am an educator. I'm an educational leader. I have been now living in the Middle East for the past 10 years almost. I am originally from New York. My parents are Colombian, Venezuelan, so it's a little bit of a mix. And now I've been here teaching and leading in Saudi for the past 5 years. And I'm really into global education, and sort of that's kind of my scope, global education.
Awesome, awesome. I can't wait to get into it. Just before we do start, we have our 10 questions that we ask everybody, the standard 10 questions that we ask everybody. Yeah, just quick fire questions.
So, beach or sightseeing?
Sightseeing.
Nice. Books or movies?
Definitely books. I'm a bookworm.
That's very nice. Your favorite ice cream flavor?
Pralines and cream, or some people call it pralines and cream. There's a debate. That's the one that I like.
Your favorite song?
I Will Survive.
Oh, that's a nice one.
And I guess I have to say that you're the first person who knows what their favorite song is.
Yeah, it's a very quick
Yeah.
answer. Yeah, I Will Survive. I remember I used to play trombone as a kid, and I was in a sort of like concert thing, orchestra thing, and we played I Will Survive, and it was the hardest song to play in the
Yeah.
trombone. And I remember me and my friends were all the way at the back, and so we just do random stuff with our trombone. We didn't follow the it was absolutely awful. Stranded on an island, what are 3 things you take?
Yeah, so I think it would be a knife, a bucket, and some sort of like plastic or tarp, so I can use it to sort of like purify water, so I have like kind of clean water to drink.
Very, very
Very
smart.
practical.
Yeah, I like it. If you could eat one food for the rest of your life, what would that food be?
Ooh, I love rice, so I think rice would be the one, on all kinds of variation of rice.
I guess there's a lot of variations. It makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
You wouldn't really get bored of rice, would you?
No, and especially like when you look at your, your background, I'm sure that, you got that from your family as well. In New York, you got a lot of different cuisines, rice now in Saudi. So
Yeah, smart. Your favorite movie?
Oh, it's a sappy romance movie. It's The Notebook.
Ah, that's great. I watched it last year, and I cried. It's one of the movies that made I cry a lot in front of movies, but that one really hit me. It's beautiful though, beautiful movie. I love it. And a book. You're a bookworm. So what is a book you think everyone should read?
So there is, I have two, nonfiction and fiction. So the nonfiction will be The Power of Moments by the Heath brothers. It's really inspirational and how to create this kind of powerful moments for people. And for fiction, I like the House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. Totally recommend it.
Okay.
all right.
Yeah, add it to the list. We get too many book recommendations.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to catch up during winter break.
Definitely.
I think that's one of my plans for winter break. Catch up a little. And 3 people you'd have dinner with, dead or alive.
Okay, so Malala will be one. really inspired by her. Greta Thunberg,
Interesting.
inspired by her. And from Dead, I would say John Dewey as an educator. I really love have to meet with him and pick on his brain. So yeah.
It seems like a very interesting dinner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So now we're getting on to the, I don't want to say real part of the podcast, but more questions, specific questions. So how would you describe your job to a 10-year-old?
I would say I'm a teacher that travels around the world and is always looking for new ways to teach and is always looking for new cultures to explore and also sort of connect people together across the world. I would say that's the rest, like the short version of what I like to do.
That's pretty inspirational, actually.
Yeah.
When you think about it. As a child, did you always think that you were going to be an educator, or was that something later in life?
Yeah, so your parents are always pushing you to be something or
Mhm.
another. So I remember my mom would have loved for me to be a doctor, and I love science. And so I knew that I had some sort of knack to teach, like I had this ability to make the hard things easy to understand. And so I knew that whatever I did in life, it has something to do with teaching. Whether if I became a doctor, I would be a doctor, but I would teach also. So I always kind of knew that I like teaching. So from a young age, I feel that was sort of like that passion that I had, that I needed to make things easy to understand. So teaching sort of always being part of what I wanted to do.
And so one question that I want to ask. So you talk about your background. So your parents were Venezuelan and Colombian, and then you grew up in Brooklyn, and now you're living in Saudi. Why is it that you left to Saudi? What's the reason for that?
Yeah, so sure. So, I always so in the US, the educational landscape is a bit difficult, and for me, I'm really um I really care about creating educational systems where the student is at the center, where really is more about letting students explore. It is not so constricted by what we have to do. And so having these opportunities around the world, like many countries that are emerging, especially sort of like they're focusing on developing their educational systems, give you that opportunity because they're looking for other ways of doing education. They're looking for expanding on how we do education better. So that opportunity opened. So opened actually in the Middle East. And at first I was in the UAE when they started opening their sort of like technical vocational schools. And that attracted me because I'm always saying, not everybody wants to do college, right? Not everybody would like to do college. So having that opportunity to start the students young to see, okay, look, there's alternative to college. You could do vocational education. And so I was doing the curriculum for those schools for a bit. Then I moved. Then I had the opportunity to come to Saudi, where they had this sort of new, innovative approach to education. And so I said, you know what, I'm interested in that, where we're bringing maker education into the classrooms, maker, sort of STEAM focus. So I said, I think this is where I need to be at the moment. And so I came here.
Yeah, it's crazy the opening that, or how Saudi has been opening itself in the past years. I think it's completely crazy. My girlfriend is actually Venezuelan as well, and she lives in. I mean, she's living in Germany, but she lived in Saudi for quite a bit, and her family is still there. So we talk about that a lot. It's sort of the changes that she's seen during when she lived there, and just moreover, just the change that we've seen in Saudi Arabia, and education must definitely be a huge part of that. Have you seen changes? Because you've been there for 10 years, right? Is that what you said? Yeah. Have you seen?
So in the region, almost 10 years,
Yeah.
and Saudi 5. Yeah, definitely. I mean, from the first day I came 5 years ago to now, like one of the things now I can drive.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of changes in the educational front. I definitely see a lot of efforts and money being fueled, and people being brought over to sort of really start looking more into global education. So definitely, absolutely seen more positive directions. I think they have very ambitious goals and can only be reached when people are educated and people are working together towards those goals. So, absolutely, it's day and night from 5 years ago.
Going off on a tangent a little bit, you were talking about the educational landscape being difficult in the States. And what do you think, as an educator, what is the reason that we have this huge difference in the States between college education, which is world renowned, known to be, some of the best, and then the pre-K to 12 that receives quite a bit of criticism?
Oh my, it's so complex. I say politics is one, right? Politics definitely, even though we should separate politics from education, I think politics make their way to education and companies' interests, so many interests conflicting to what actually should be a very social, noble service to people. It doesn't happen to be that way. So, um, and I think the disconnect is because also we're afraid to try different things, and there are systems that are built so way to keep certain people for certain opportunities. It's true, you know. So I think that things are changing. Some people are more courageous and they're trying different things. They're opening different types of schools. It's just gaining enough momentum, enough political power, and I think people have to come together and sort of be like, this is what we need to see, this is what we want to see, and gain that voice. So like we really need people to, the young people, to say this is what we want education to be, you know. So if you hear if there's more voices together, uh that will bring change forward. And I think that's really it, bringing people together to work together and let their voices be heard, so that we do a service. Because think about it, like in a lot, I really feel for people who graduate in the next 10, 20 years, that the schools are not preparing them for that. Even in college, sometimes there's this gap of the skills that you need to the actual things that you get in college. And then when you go to work, you have to reskill, upskill, and you're like, I wasn't really prepared, So all of that has to be changed, and it's taking place. And I think it's more obvious now with the pandemic, when people had to like redefine their roles, and how do we do this, And so those conversations are started, and those conversations are really getting to get people together to work together and getting that change to happen.
Absolutely. And I think, talking about the gap between what you're being taught at college and what, you have to do in real life, I think that's sort of the gap that we have realized that we have. And just looking up certain statistics that we were reading before we started, that more than half of undergraduates, while they are in their studies or currently are studying, still have absolutely no idea what they want to do with their lives, because they don't actually know what the day-to-day job of a professional looks like.
Yeah, and that's the goal of our podcast.
Yeah.
Even just for us to be able to talk to a lot of different people, it just helps us so much in filling that gap, understanding what exactly your job is. So
going back to your career though, so what was that decisive moment when you decided that, okay, I want to be an educator globally and do what you do now?
Yeah, so for me, it's been okay. So in 2013, 2012, that's when I made the decision. So I was doing a PhD program. And so, because I always wanted to, my education has never been really straightforward. It's taken really ups and downs, and a lot of thinking and redefining on what I wanted to do. So I was doing a PhD program at that time, but I had this sort of like breakdown one day, because I was reading really sad stories about like the educational system and the inequities, and sort of like I asked the professor, well, can we change these things? And he said, look, you can, but just focus on one classroom at a time, one school at a time. And I felt really frustrated. I said, no, I really need to do more, because I just can't take that. So being depressed at that moment, I said, you know what, I'm gonna look outside and see what's out there. I need to see more hope. I need to see that there's people working towards changing the system. And so I was looking for careers. I was looking for opportunities in China, opportunities everywhere, like teach abroad kind of opportunities. Then I applied, and it turns out that, I had this interview to come in the Middle East, and I said, okay, you know what? Why not? Let me try it. I'll see. I'm really interested to see how it is to teach abroad. And I know that I like traveling. I know that I like different types of cultures. I knew that I wanted to make a change, like systematic change. And they were making these systematic changes because they were opening new type of schools. Like it wasn't, common to have vocational schools in the region. So that was that opportunity. I said, oh, they're doing something for their educational system. So I said, I want to be part of that change. So I'm going to go and apply. So I got, I got the job, and I said, okay, well, I got the job. So now what? What does that mean? So am I prepared to kind of go global, because some things that you really need when you're in a global educator, you have to really sort of be really humble, and that you're not going there to implement change upon people. You're working with the people in the countries that you go, right? So you have to really have those skills of understanding people, skills to work from people from all types of countries with all different types of set of skills and training. So I wasn't sure what I was gonna be facing until I got there, and then I realized, okay, wow, I'm dealing with all kinds of personalities, different types of intricacies in the countries that I'm in. So that was sort of like a learning curve, just to kind of know how to deal with all different types of people, and always sort of like not comparing it to your country, because it's like it happens, so like, oh, but we do this the way somewhere else. But like, no, you are in this new context, you have to understand and adapt. So I think adapting was a big one for me during this time of changing to being a global educator.
And so how was that adaptation? Because I imagine that going from the US to Saudi must be uh, complicated in a lot of ways. And how was it adapting to this new global education?
Yeah, so I think, well, first of all, you just have to really be open-minded, open to knowing that things are different in every place that you go. Sometimes there are days you really want to cry, and you're gonna say, "Oh my God, what have I, what have I got to?" But you gotta see your vision and the purpose. So I think adapting helps when you have a clear vision of what you want to do, and your purpose, right? So it's that purpose, that passion together. Because passion alone is not gonna get you many places, because passion is very kind of individual, and your passions can change. But when you purpose, you're working with more people. You're really, it's bigger than just the passion put together. It's perfect, right? So I think that the adjustment, it wasn't easy. There are days that are harder than others, but when I go back to think about my passion and my purpose, I said, okay, I need to be here at this time. I'm gonna work with people in this time, so I just need to adjust the way I do things. And it just naturally comes, with patience. There are lots of patience.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that I'm picking up, that you do have quite a bit of patience, and how patient you are, and seeing how things will unfold and how they will work out in the future. So currently, what does a day look like in your life?
Oof. So these days are quite busy. I am also, so I am doing my second master's through
Oh.
Harvard School of Education, and all while remotely because of the pandemic and everything. So kind of had the opportunity to do it, and so I said, okay, let me do it. Let me try it out. So doing that while working full time, and I'm a mother as well. So it's a very busy day. So my day starts usually around 4 or 5 in the morning. I wake up early. I read. I pray. I mean, it's just sort of make my to-do list. So I'm really good at time management, because that's something you have to do when you're so busy.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
I like to contribute also. I like to contribute also. So I volunteer in different kind of things, like whether it's doing curriculum for organizations, or if I find an opportunity to contribute to like a global conversation. Like recently we did this UNESCO chapter on building back better, and sort of like how like some of the innovations countries have done during the pandemic. And so I had the opportunity to work with this group of people, researchers here in Saudi, and with UNESCO and my professor at Harvard. So it's very busy. You just have to make sure that you sort of plan it out. And sometimes you don't have this social, but you have to have a balance. So I think that's where I'm trying to learn now. It's like, okay, where's my my social time? Because otherwise you're burned out. But very busy at the moment, because there's a lot of changes happening too at work. So I'm typically, my working hours are from like 8 to 5, and then I just have to have time for family and stuff. In other schools it's shorter, so it really depends on where you're working and what institution you're working.
Yeah, and I realized we haven't really asked you what you studied exactly, right?
Yeah, that's what what I want to talk about. And I think her educational path is incredibly interesting.
Yeah. And we know a little bit more about what exactly you studied. Yeah.
So I tell you how I started. Well, even education. So I always knew I had loved science. So my background, it is in science. And so I have a bachelor's in science in biology, and a bachelor's in chemistry, and in education. And then I got a master's in science education. Now I'm getting my master's in educational policy, international education policy. But I started school. So just going back to when, I went in college, I was raised, I said, in Venezuela. So at the age of 12, my parents moved over to the US, and it wasn't always straightforward and easy because, I didn't have the documents for a long time. So I'm being very vulnerable here. So like many students, especially minorities, sometimes their parents bring them over and there's visa issues, and then you overstay. So my status changed maybe when I just had graduated college. So I did all the right things in school. I was like one of the A students, and I said, where do I go? I saw my friends applying to these fancy universities and getting in, and I knew I couldn't at that moment because I couldn't get a scholarship, couldn't afford it. So my document situation got fixed. My father sort of helped me get my documents fixed. And I remember didn't have the money, so I started in a community college. I started in a 2-year school. I said, okay, well, maybe studying nursing or something with science. And I said, I'll do this 2 years. Then when I finally, kind of resolved my status, I was able to go to school and got a scholarship to sort of pay for my 4 years of education. So I was debt free for a long time because I was able to get scholarship and fellowships to do research and sort of study what I wanted to, which was biology and chemistry. And so it's like the important thing is here is like to really not give up, because I remember times I had to work 3 jobs to pay for my education, because I wasn't getting any money for it. So I was only working during the week and Saturday and Sundays when I went to school. So imagine, so it was like very difficult times. But then I got to where I did it. I finished. I completed my bachelor's, then my master's, and then tried a PhD. Kind of give up after a year for a bit. Probably resume it later, not sure, because it's kind of like long life learner. But yeah, so now here we are. I have 1 semester left to get my second master's, and yeah, so that's sort of like the educational path.
Congratulations. First of all, that's all I must say. Like the
Very,
persistence that
very
you have
impressive.
is incredibly impressive and inspiring. And also special thanks, just being that candid and vulnerable. I don't know if that helps the conversation anymore, but I was in the same shoes. So I was a DACA kid for years. I started community college while I was working. I just couldn't manage the two. And then I moved back to Europe because I do have a European citizenship, and I just figured it's so much cheaper here. So I just moved back to Europe. And when that option is not available, I know that it's incredibly, incredibly difficult.
There's so much merit though to what you have achieved.
Of course,
it's just it's so hard for. I mean, when you're that young, and we're extremely privileged compared to what you went through, right? And it's already hard sometimes for us to just focus and study, and thinking that some people have to worry about things like whether or not they're going to be able to stay in a country, or working 3 jobs on top of that.
Yeah.
There's just so much merit to it. And that's when you realize how privileged you've been to not have to think about those things on top of studying.
And I think it's very interesting to hear for Europeans that, or those that are not, didn't grow up in the States, that people in the States would face these kinds of issues, because you would think that everything just goes super easy in the States, while it's actually not at all like that. And over here in Europe, we have free education in a lot of cases, in a lot of countries, and a lot of times I think that's taken for granted in a way. So yeah, a little bit went off.
At the same time, I think it should almost be taken for granted.
Yeah. A little bit went off on a tangent there, but yeah, once again,
it's very beautiful and extremely inspiring, and it's really a testament to how you won't give up, and it's a very beautiful mentality.
Yep. So, but I think it also shows that there is not really a typical pathway into education, right? So you can come from different backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have had people who had corporate jobs and left corporate jobs and sort of went into education because that's what they felt like that's where they needed to be. And so you'll see that a lot. You'll see people like second careers or educators, they sort of like kind of went into it because they felt like that's the need. And there's lots of programs like in the US to sort of like change and alternatives to like the way you typically will get your license, and so they have that. But as an educational, like a global educator, it's different. You'll have people who necessarily will get their training just in the job, so they have a bachelor's and not necessarily have taught before. They get that opportunity here. Like you see that especially when they're looking at teachers to teach English or some sort of like different language, but then you'll see people who have been trained and they come from their countries disillusioned. Like we have lots of people from the UK, and it's like, oh, the system is there, they're leaving to teach somewhere else because of the difficulties again they face in their educational system. So it's a growing niche, and you see more and more as countries get more international, and then you'll see more and more people coming just to teach. So there's a lot of perks as well, I tell you, like being able to travel a lot, and within like when you're living internationally, getting to meet people from all over the world. And usually they usually comes with like wherever you work, they'll give you housing, they give you all these sort of benefits that you don't have to worry about when you're like, oh, where I'm going to pay and it's tax-free in many countries. So that also kind of adds to the benefits of doing that. So it could be very lucrative if you're really good at saving and sort of like have a plan in mind as well.
Yeah, I lived in Lebanon for. Sorry.
How's my mic? Is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Did you take off your headphones?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to ask. I had this question in mind for a while. Is sort of what's the difference between the vocational schools and the traditional educational system that we're used to?
Sure. So the vocational schools are more focused on having the students sort of have a path and a job after they graduate, right after they graduate. So for example, where I was working, they were really focusing on having students in the nursing field because they didn't have national students in the nursing field. So they started this high school with that in mind. So like when you finish high school, you can go right directly into nursing, working in there, but also get a nursing degree as well as you work. So you have the skills to start a job, but you can also further that by going to the school they wanted you to. So if it's engineering, if it's nursing, it's nursing. So it's just sort of like alternative college, very focused on what they wanted them to do. So like whether it's engineering or nursing, or like if it's a paramedic. So it just gave students more of a direct thing of what they needed and what they knew they wanted to do, as opposed to just preparing you holistically and then you go into college and try to figure out what you want to do. So it's more purpose, like, okay, I know that I'm gonna get this job, and I'm gonna, if I don't need to go further in education, I can still work, I still have skills. But if I can then continue on in the path, then I could do that too.
I have a sorry.
I just wanted to, what's the you said you're an assistant principal at a school there in Saudi now. Is that also one of these special schools, or I don't know if special is the right word, but and what kind of system is it there?
Yeah, so it's interesting because they're sort of trying to build their own sort of system that doesn't really, they wanted to disrupt education at the school that I work in, it's called Miss School. So they wanted to sort of make a very different system altogether. So it's taking time to get there. But I think, and I think the clear vision that they will do something very different is coming. So, but it is still kind of like traditional in the sense of it's K to 12. Hopefully, students will get some sort of path to college or path to whatever it is that they want to go. So they are focusing, and as they develop their new curriculum, to really sort of make it really student center, in the sense of like they're giving kids the opportunity to have internships starting in 9th grade and maybe earlier. So sort of having them experience the world of work as they are also in school. So building those kind of connections as they do internships and stuff early on in their high school career.
So do you think that's the future of education? Just us professionalizing ourselves way earlier?
I think you have to, like, some people say, oh, but why are we doing this like path to work, and sort of like, is that sort of like a rat race? But I think it's important to be very realistic, like what are people going to do? Like, yes, you have your purpose and you want to change the world, but you also need to make money, and you also need to have a sort of way to support yourself. So I think definitely training students very early, because we don't know what the careers of the world will be. And this is the thing, right? So like before, yeah, you'll still have doctors, but technology is changing so rapidly that there are jobs that you guys don't know that they'll be in 10 years. We don't even know. Like, look, social influencers, it's a job, it's something. It just came out of nowhere. And so how do you train for that? How do you teach for that kind of things, So I think that giving skills is going to be more important. It's going to trump kind of like the path, oh, scientists, oh, this, no, it's the skills. And then people are going to constantly learn how to learn. And I think that's important. In schools, we should teach people how to learn, period, because it's not so much of the content. I can Google things, I can find out things so easily, right? I don't need a teacher to tell me that. But learning how to learn, it's so important and so powerful, because since careers are changing so rapidly, being able to skill and upskill is an important tool, an important way to do things. So I think just learning how to learn, how to, be self, like regulate yourself in achieving your goals, and sort of being very open and adaptable is going to be one of those skills that we really most focus on in schools.
Yeah, I really, really, really love that. I think that whole learning to learn thing, it just makes sense because when you're starting school, you're going to be on the job market, I don't know, 20 years later. And it's true. There's no way we're going to predict what the demand for jobs is or what jobs are going to appear, what jobs are going to disappear. It just makes so much sense, especially now. World is moving faster, new technologies, all that. It just makes sense.
But I do have a question about that. So as you were describing vocational schools, that it's just a much smoother path into employment. What that sounds like to me, though, that I would have to go into vocational school knowing what I want to do. So how early do we have to, start teaching children or allowing them to figure out what is that they want to do so they can make that decision?
Yeah, so that's difficult. But you see, if people do this sort of like personalized path and allow kids to sort of experiment and start looking at what makes them passionate, what makes them sort of like, what problems are there in the world to fix? What can I do? Like, what can I do to make the place better? If you bring that into the curriculum, if you allow kids to ask questions and really be curious, naturally you'll come up to something that you really like, right? So like my kid, for example, likes music, and that's something that he really wants to pursue, and only you know that because you allow them to sort of like ask questions and be like, but I want to try this out, and then but even if you know that early on, you also have to teach them that you don't have to stay in one path for the rest of your life. That's not really what it is. Like, because we change, and I believe people change, and we just sort of like can't change paths, like it's just, I guess with the cost of college and with the cost of it's just the problem, right? Like you can really, oh my God, can I afford to go another 4 years? Can I afford to do all this all over again? But if we really have more opportunities where the skills are free to learn, and sort of like you are open to trying things, then it wouldn't be so important to teach them so early, because then it's a lifelong learning, so it didn't really matter what I did yesterday, because I could do something different tomorrow, right? Because I could learn the skills. But I would say, if you want to experiment early, just let them experiment, ask questions, put a curriculum where kids actually are sort of brought into the opportunities to try many different things, and just sort of like decide what they want to do and how they want to contribute to the world.
Yeah, I think it's just very interesting how, when you look at a child and their development, that when they're little, they will choose a profession based on their passion. And once they grasp an understanding of finances, it changes to, okay, what job is going to pay me the most? And I just wish that wasn't that limitation, that people pick jobs based on, salaries that they're not necessarily good at and they don't enjoy, but based on passion. And maybe this could be a way to allow people to explore their passions.
Yeah,
more.
But also I think when you're a kid, often the jobs you like think, like I wanted to be an architect as a kid, that was like, yeah, I'll be an architect. But that's because I didn't understand what an architect did, right? And so once I understood what an architect did, well, I was like, well, that's just not for me, right? And so that's why I think that this system where you're gonna have internships earlier on, because that was what you said, right? Like, how are the kids gonna orient themselves, right? Because even we're not sure what we want to do. But if we were put in an educational system like that pushed us to like experience real work things, then maybe we would have known, and maybe that's the way to go.
For sure. But I'm just talking about, that some people, let's say as children, are passionate about things that they know are not going to pay well. So especially in the States, when you're interested in arts or interested in more like things in the humanities side, then a lot of times you will get like pushback that, that is not going to pay. And then, you know what I mean? What is your opinion on it?
Yes. So for me, oh gosh, definitely went to education, and some people is like, oh, you're not gonna make a fortune on it. But it's, look, for me, I love this Japanese philosophy, the ikigai. Are you guys familiar with it?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so I love it. I think everybody should look it up. So basically, what Ikigai, this philosophy, it's sort of like, okay, when people have, you are passionate about something, right? Something that you can get paid for doing, not necessarily a fortune, but you can live off of, and something that is sort of like what the world needs. So you think about, what does the world need? So it's bigger than you, right? What is something that you really like to do and you're good at, and what is something that you can also get paid for. And in the middle of that, like right in the center of that, is sort of like your purpose. So that's your life purpose. So it's very powerful because it's driven by purpose as opposed to whether you get money or not, right? So, but it usually, if you're doing something that the world needs, definitely it's going to be a demand for what you're doing. And it's going to fulfill you personally. So I feel that using that sort of lens helps a lot in making the best decision. And so I've done that. So for example, I work with some girls, once I'm helping them, they're in high school and they're like, oh, what am I gonna do? And it's that time. It's like, even starts early, not even college. It starts in high school, and especially like if you're like overachieving and you're like, what am I gonna do? So I was sat with her and I said, okay, look, let's do this exercise with Ikigai. So think about, I want you to make a list of things that you're really good at. So she made her list of what she's really good at. And I said, okay, now what are things that you feel the world needs? Like what are some of the needs in the world? Like, climate change, or anything you feel like the world is really struggling with at the moment. Make a list of that. And I said, okay, now let's make a list of things that you can get paid for in those sort of things. Like, what are some jobs related to what the world needs and something that you might be good at, right? And so we highlighted it, and we narrow our sort of list down into a couple of things. I said, oh, I'm really interested to know, like, okay, so if I want to be an entrepreneur, what do I need to be an entrepreneur? So then we research then the skills of entrepreneurs, people that are entrepreneurs. And so that sort of gave us an idea of many different sort of path that she could take now on. And now she's like, oh, feeling better, because she knows that if she did that, she'll be helping the world, she'll be doing something that she might be good at, and at the same time it's something that will give her some money too as well.
Yeah,
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, I like
I'm pretty
that.
sure.
Pretty pragmatic. And you knew about it, Josh. When
Yeah.
she talked about it, you seemed very proud.
That's what was going through my mind as well. Like, okay, after our call, I am going to make my list, and I'm going to try to do that as well.
Sure. So Montessori, here, especially here, it's more geared, not that they do it through high school and you have some Montessori high schools as well, but in here, particularly in my context, is focused mostly in early childhood. So it's sort of like very child-centered, the kids exploring, testing materials, and sort of giving them that opportunity to really learn through doing things, to learn by the interaction with them and the materials that they're have been crafted for them to explore. So I think the vocational, I guess the connection there is basically more of doing stuff, right? So vocational is something that you're very hands-on, it's very service oriented, like you're doing something, right? Like it's very very much like I learned to program a computer, right? And that's very hands-on. So that's, I guess, the connection between them in the sense of Montessori. It's really the kid center playing, structure play, but at the same time interacting with materials and stuff. And in vocational schools, is really centered on the kids learning particular skills, learning particular ways of doing things. And for example, in the one that I was working, I was doing the curriculum for the girls that will go into nursing, and my friend was working on the girls that were going into the digital path and like digital literacy. And so they were doing more like, oh, learning how to use, for example, Adobe, maybe learning how to record or learning how to have a podcast, and kind of those skills that you acquire. So very targeted on something that they needed to acquire, the skills they needed to acquire.
That makes sense. So I think we touched a little bit on one of the misconceptions about, teaching as a profession, which was that you're not going to make a fortune. But are there any other things that you wish that people would know about your job or common misconceptions?
Yeah, so people always hate on teachers because we have a summer off. Like, oh, you have you don't work for 2-3 months, but we do. So during this time, our summer time off, we usually plan, we usually do a lot of PDs. This is where we do our professional development, or we just need to really relax. I think teaching is a very stressful career. It's dealing with people takes a lot of energy, and when you really give yourself, like every time you're going into a classroom, you sort of have to let, like, sort of be the psychologist, be the mother, be the we wear so many hats in one typical interaction. Dealing with students, they have their own baggage that comes to school. It doesn't stop at school, right? They come and bring their own issues. So we have to do so many things, and this takes a toll mentally, right? So those months really help us to sort of like refresh, re-energize to do it all over again, So so the misconception is that, oh, summer off, easy job. It isn't at all. It's something that we deal with people, and dealing with people every day. It's tiresome, It gets we have to have that time to recharge and re-energize and learn, and so constantly learning. So teachers are constant lifelong learners because things change. We need to adjust. Just look at the pandemic. Many people, if you didn't have technology, like some people are scared of technology, and if you didn't really use it before, it's just completely new. And teaching online is a completely new set of skills that we had to learn.
Absolutely.
Not only the kids, but we as teachers. So it's been hard, but we're doing it. So it's just that attitude, like you never stop learning. I think it's something that we need to tell people. And teachers, we get master's degrees, like that's the minimum. So like we're really highly educated. So it's not an easy job and not an easy career. It takes time and passion and dedication and patience to be teachers.
I think what I've seen a lot, at least in France, probably internationally, I'm just more connected to France, is that COVID changed a lot of this point of view of like teaching is an easy job, like parents having their kids 24/7. And then I think a lot of people realize, oh, okay, so having 25 of those in a class or however much you have, it's not an easy job.
Most definitely.
No, it's and I agree a lot with also the online teaching being a completely different set of skills. I agree with that completely. I think that's something we've seen a lot, transitioning from in-person to online.
And I think we owe thanks to all of our educators that are really trying their best to make that transition. But you were talking about wearing, many hats in, even one limited conversation or interaction. So what do you think, what are those personality traits that make you successful and that make, good teachers good teachers?
Yes. So they have to be really centered on the well-being of the student. Like you have to be really caring about this person as a whole. Because the honest truth, you're not going to like every student you see. Because we don't like every person we meet. And that's just a fact of life. But we have to love them regardless, right? So even learning to love people that we might not even like. Because
I like that.
That's it. That's the real
Yeah.
life. They're in you have that responsibility,
Yeah.
and it's your responsibility. And so you just have to have that understanding that I'm gonna make an effort to love this person, no matter how challenging they might be. And so, and also having that, like, I care for this person as a whole. This person might have this thing that I don't like, but then there's 10 other things that I like about this person, and this person has potential. So always knowing that that the person has potential to do better, and always being able to push that person, help them get there, right? So the job of the educator is not to put things in your head, but helping you figure those things out. So the trade is helping people figure things out. I guess that's the biggest. As a good educators are always guides that help people get there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think that those characteristics apply to teachers that teach at all levels? Do you think it's more centered to like the classes you teach, or do you think a college teacher needs to have those traits as well, or is it different?
I think it goes all levels, because look, even college professors, I noticed that the best ones are really the ones that care about you, that they really mentor you, and really want to push you further and be like, I'll connect you with this, do this, try this, what about this, and make that human connection, not just listen, I'm gonna here to teach you A to Z, and whether you learn or not, that's not my problem. Those that you don't learn from them, right? You learn from people that make the connection and go the extra mile to be there for you. And so, and those are the teachers that I remember and I'm inspired by and want to be like, so it's just knowing that you can get better. Like if I reflect upon myself being a teacher when I started to now, I said, oh my God, I could have been better, and it's just that reflection of, okay, every day I try to be better, and what will make me a better teacher, and if I need to learn something new, I'm going to learn it, because I owe it to the people that I work for, so it's one of those service careers that you're really working for people, so you have to know what they need and provide that.
That's a very humble mentality, I think.
I have a question. Just how would you, or how do you deal with difficult students?
Oh, it's hard. So how do you deal with it? It really depends on where you work, right? So different schools have different policies on how to deal with them. But in my classroom, we all have norms, and we're supposed to sort of like come together with these norms and follow the norms. But I think that the first step is to ask them what's going on, sort of really connect with them, right? Sometimes, as I said, everybody brings their own baggage into school, and we don't know what's happening, what makes people react a certain way. Sometimes they're just bored out of their mind because maybe their curriculum is not inspiring them, and they know more, so you really have to know, because every person is different, so how you're going to react, or how they work, like why they being disruptive might be different, so how do you deal with them, it's going to be different, right? It's not like one cookie cutter way to deal with their situation. But I think just sort of find out what's going on. Like it could be they're bored, and then you could step it up in your teaching, help them sort of involve them more, like in the things that you do, sort of like, so their voice is being heard and they can see it in the way you teach. Also could be, might be something at home, so you help them to understand and sort of find out what is going on. So this is where those hats come in place. Like, okay, if I need to be more like nurturing, I'll be like a mom to you, or if I need to sort of like connect you to someone in the school who can help you, then I'll do that. So it's always really caring and showing that you care, and be consistent, like students can, people can read you and they know from a mile where you're being genuine or not. So if you're being genuine, you put the extra mile. And I know, like I put the extra mile for the teachers that I really connect with, and then that I feel that they understand me.
Yeah.
I think before we ask our last question, the bonus question, I just wanted to ask you, a couple of times you mentioned that, you're in Saudi, and for now. So where do you see yourself in the future? Is I guess my question.
Ooh, so now I involve my children more because they're older. So I ask my kids like, okay, where do you want us to go next? Like before I was making those decisions, but I need to think about them too. So they're really like, one of my kids is like really looking into Japan. He's like, he loves Japan and he's like, he wants to go to Japan. My daughter is more about like Canada. So I'm really looking forward to see. I really don't know, like, where does the need take me, right? So next is more about whether maybe Europe, maybe I really don't know yet. I sort of go where the need is growing, where I see opportunities, where I see I can really make a difference and I can bring value. That's where I'll go. So it's just really, I'm not close to a certain place. I'm open, I'm open to where I can go next.
I'm not sure how old your son is, but Josh lived in Japan as a child. So maybe, if your son would have any specific questions, I'm pretty sure that Josh could answer some that, what was his perception of Japan.
Yeah, I think Asia in general is it's something you have to experience. There's so much to love about it, and it's so interesting. And I think I'm sure there'll be a lot of opportunities for education as well. So I'm looking forward to following your future steps.
Yeah. I just have another second to last question, if that's okay. It's a bit more, sure. I don't know. Just about Saudi Arabia, from what I understand, I mean, it used to be nothing, right? Just basically desert, right? Then they found petrol and it grew crazy, right? And so now they're putting a lot of emphasis on their education to try and diversify their fields so that they don't rely on petrol as much, right? And so how do you see the future of Saudi Arabia? Do you think they're going to be able to succeed to transform their economy into something new? Or
Absolutely. So they're focusing a lot on moving away from that to a more human-centered, like human knowledge economy. So it's about harvesting people's skills and job, like people, right? So focusing on that. So they are spending a lot of upskilling, reskilling job at people's careers, focusing a lot on that. There's a big new thing on making sustainable cities, making sustainable places. So this whole green initiative of other alternative ways of using energy. So you'll see a lot of that happening, and it's opening up to a lot of international companies to come and invest. So that it's very diverse. Like Saudi in itself is very diverse, like landscape. So you'll see that, and it's going to be really fairly quick movement because people are interested, and there's a lot of investment, lots of opportunities. So I will see, like it was just announced a couple of weeks ago that they'll have the first nonprofit city, so it's just going to be lots of things happening right now.
That's very exciting too. I think witness that firsthand, especially.
It's a country I'm really interested in. I'd like to go there as well. I'd see myself spending like a few years in Saudi Arabia. Cool. I think it's just so interesting, the transformation that the country's been through, and the political system as well. It's not something we see a lot, and just the fact of how well it works, I think, is a testament to how much Occidental countries and Occidental political systems can learn from different things. Very, very interesting.
Went off on a tangent there a bit.
But I don't know. It's just we don't always get the opportunity to talk to someone that witnesses that change from the grounds up, right? Because you're teaching the future Saudi Arabians, so I think you're probably one of the best people to ask
for sure
about this.
Thank you.
So we want to go to the last question now, which is the question we asked to all of our guests to sort of close out the episode. which is what is one piece of advice you'd give to your 20-year-old self?
I would say to always, wow, it's hard. What do I want to say? So many things. I think it's just to have a lot of, well, let me see, how do I say this? Not to give up. So like it's always, there's always going to be hard moments in your life, and sometimes you just want to give it all up, but it's important to keep on going. And just don't give up, keep on going. This will always find their way. I think that's the advice I would say.
I like that.
Yeah,
very positive.
Very, very positive. Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you very, very much for being with us today. It was our honor and pleasure to have you.
It was really, really great.
Thank you
I'm very happy with how it went. You're very, very interesting, and I think your opinion on education is amazing. I agree with it completely, and I wish it's going to be shared a lot more.
Yes.
In the future, because we need minds like you to think about the future of our education.
I think the education system is one of the longest standing systems that haven't had a complete revolution, and I think if your vision of education in the future is even somewhat resemblant, then I'm very positive about the future.
Confident to send my children in the future to school.
No, it's very, very great. I really, really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Very great. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
I was so happy. Thank you. I was so happy to be invited, and I really enjoy our conversations. Really, really thank you, and I wish you guys good luck, and that all your inspirations and dreams get to be realized.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and we will let you know as soon as we are uploading the episode, so you can see it in its final form.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for
coming.
Thank
you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.